Hello, welcome to your academy. At your academy, today in this lecture, we will deal with one of the sonnets from Shakespearean sonnets, are the series of sonnets written by William Shakespeare, which are also known as the Shakespearean sonnets. In this lecture, we will deal with sonnet number 52 from the series of Shakespearean sonnets. Sonnet number 52 is the most mysterious sonnet written by William Shakespeare. The interpretation of this sonnet, has, one would say, gone to the lengths. Critics have gone to the extent of decoding this particular sonnet. One of the reasons that this sonnet has demanded various interpretations, different kind of interpretations, has been one, the use of the word key in this sonnet, that is Key, key. And this is the only sonnet, by the way, in which William Shakespeare makes the use of the word key in it. Now, this word key has been, a word of attraction for most of the critics, since it does not exist in any other sonnet, and this key is used for unlocking, unlocking a lock, unlocking, breaking a code, doing whatever one could say. And William Wordsworth, the greatest romantic poet, goes on to the extent of saying that this sonnet, that is sonnet number 52, opens the way to unlock the heart of William Shakespeare. Now, this statement that this goes to the extent of opening the heart of William Shakespeare suggests that it does not only open the heart of William Shakespeare, but if you go in depth, of understanding the reality of William Shakespeare as a writer and decoding everything that William Shakespeare has written in numerous ways, Wordsworth says that this sonnet is the place from where one should begin. Now, that is, this word key, has made readers and critics to think differently, and rather more differently, about these sonnets than perhaps they would have done with the other sonnets. The other thing which attracts the readers, the critics, more in this sonnet is the placement of the sonnet at 52, and the number 52, which is the placement of this sonnet, followed by the references to year, to calendar, to time. Though there are references to time in the initial sonnets of this series also, but this sonnet, which is placed at 52, there are critics who say that in an year there are 52 weeks. So, and then there is also a reference to year, there are references to time. So they start interpreting this sonnet from the point of view of the calendar also, that and there are also other suggestions which would go towards that. So that is another reason why people tend to interpret this sonnet in a different way. There is also a reference to the treasure in this sonnet, and the key, the treasure, 52, the sequence, and all these things put together make this sonnet very mysterious. Therefore, critics would try to decode it in various perspectives, in various points of views. And then there are also references to the sexuality, to the sensuousness, which exists also in the sonnets after 130. And this sonnet also gives some vague references, and there have been some critics who have looked at this sonnet from that perspective also. So this sonnet brings to the reader various responses, different responses, and the readers, depending on their perception, would interpret this sonnet as differently as they could. There is another aspect to which we would be sticking, not stretching the interpretations too far as has been the case with this sonnet, but we will put this sonnet in the bracket of sonnets from 42 to 53, 54, which mostly deal with the separation of the youth from the poet. So there have been the sonnet, for example, sonnet number 48 and sonnets preceding 48, which deal with the absence of the poet and the absence of the friend, for that matter. And the poet is, saddened by the separation of the youth, of the WH, and he often would mourn that absence. And one of the most obvious uh, interpretation of this sonnet would be in context of the absence of the youth. Now, putting all these things in context, the interpretation would obviously be very difficult, and I in this lecture won't be decoding or demystifying this sonnet, but would just present to you some of the most popular interpretations that this sonnet brings up. First up, let's take up the text and then read it in detail. So, am I as the rich whose blessed key can bring him to his sweet uplocked treasure, the which he will not every hour survey, for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure? Therefore, our feast so solemn and so rare, since seldom coming in the long year set, like stones of worth they thinly placed are, captain jewels in the carcanet. So is the time that keeps you as my chest, or as the wardrobe which the robe doth hide, to make some special instant special blessed, by new unfolding his imprisoned pride. Blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope, being had to triumph, being lacked to hope. That was the text of sonnet number 52. Now, after reading the text, we will, explain this sonnet line by line, as we have been dealing with other sonnets from this series. So it begins, so am I as the rich whose blessed key can bring to him to his sweet up unlocked treasure. Now, at the very beginning have we the references, those of which I talked at the introduction, and they are the word rich, the word key, but this is not only the key, but it's the blessed key, and this blessed key can lead one to the unlocked treasure that one has had. Now, these are the words that put this sonnet into that category of mystery. This is not a straightforward argument that William Shakespeare is making here. Rather, he is asking, so am I the rich? Which rich? He says that, am I the rich? But which rich? The one who has got the blessed key of some unlocked treasure. Now, unlocked treasure would be a treasure which is fully in store. Nobody has taken anything from that store before this, and this rich man, this rich person holds that blessed key which will give entry into that treasure. William Wordsworth considered this key and the blessed treasure, perhaps the intellect of William Shakespeare, perhaps the writings of the Shakespeare, and this sonnet marked that key, which if some person wishes, can dive deep into the works of William Shakespeare to find many new things that perhaps are there, was what William Shakespeare thought about. But here, in the context which I talked about at the end of the introduction, and that was about the absence. So therefore, this locked treasurer here, treasure could perhaps refer to the youth, to the WH, who is not present here but is locked somewhere else. And this guy, that is William Shakespeare, the poet, the speaker, whosoever he is having the key, with which he can unlock that treasure and see him. So one thing we find out here is that the poet is in control of the things. He is in control of the things because he is having the blessed key. Had he not had the blessed key, then the things would have been different. But he has the blessed key, and this blessed key can unlock the locked treasure. Therefore, he seems in control of the things. His beloved could be away from him, but he could get him or her back. In this case, we often say him because WH perhaps refers to a male friend of William Shakespeare rather than the female. But the which he will not every hour survey, for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure. But there is a condition that the poet himself puts on. Yes, I have the blessed key. Yes, that key could be used to unlock the locked treasure, but the poet is not going to unlock it. Now again I say, it's the choice that the poet is having, it's the control that the poet is having over that key, over that treasure that he wishes, if he wishes he can unlock, but he does not want to unlock because he does not want to blunt that pleasure. He does not want to go and keep on looking on that pleasure time and again, time and again. Now this bluntness that he refers to in the fourth verse, for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure. This treasure gives pleasure if you look at that treasure. But even here the use of the word blunt puts this sonnet in space of that mystery. He says that for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure, what Shakespeare does not want to do is that he does not want to look repeatedly at this pleasure, because he fears that his repeated looks at this pleasure would blunt the fine point. Now what does this fine point refer to? Taking a very close interpretation, we would say that it refers to perhaps to that bluntness of the key. And if he goes, this is very an obvious kind of an interpretation. He goes time and again and unlocks that treasure and locks that treasure, unlocks that treasure, locks that treasure. Obviously he could end up making that key blunt, and there may come a point in time when he would not be able to unlock that with a blunt key. So that could be one of the interpretations of this why he does not want to take a look at that treasure time and again, is because he does not want to blunt something. And here I gave the reference to key, but there have been some people who have taken the bluntness of the meaning of for blunting the fine point of the seldom pleasure with phallus, with sexual intercourse, with male reproductive organ. But that seems to be a very far-fetched and distant kind of an interpretation, which I am not going with here. What we have found in these initial 4 lines is that the poet has some treasure, which could be WH, because most of the sonnets are dedicated to him. He has got the key with which he can unlock that treasure, which means even if he is separated from his friend, his beloved friend, he has got the source, the means to visit him, to meet him, to get close to him. He has got all those means, but he does not wish to. And this that he does not wish to has been a case that William Shakespeare has put forward in numerous sonnets. He does not want, because we also know from the various sonnets from this series that his friend had betrayed William Shakespeare, which means that his friend was not that interested in the friendship of William Shakespeare as William Shakespeare is. Therefore William Shakespeare is not, for that matter, very comfortable in forcing the union with his friend. So that not to force with his friend would be not to make this whole case more blunt, though it is blunt. There are suggestions from various sonnets, and this interpretation can go again with sonnet number 116, wherein he says, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds." So we could say that William Shakespeare is giving also that space to this relationship of his with his friend. Now these were the first few verses, but there seems to be certain control over the things with the poet. "Therefore are feasts so solemn and so rare, since seldom coming in the long year set." But the first 2 verses of the second quatrain give us a completely different perspective of this sonnet. And what is that? What we said earlier was that there is a control in the hands of the poet, that it is deliberately that he does not wish to unlock that treasure. But that deliberateness goes away in the first 2 verses of the second quatrain, when he says, "Therefore are feasts so solemn and so rare, since seldom coming in the long year set." Now that is the reason that the feasts, the celebrations are very rare. Why are they rare? Because he, that is his friend, does not come every time. It sets a long year in between before they can meet, or there is huge gap of time before they can come and meet. Now since there is a long time space, and perhaps now we realize that the key, that the blessed key that the poet is having is not sufficient, is not enough to get him close to his friends. There is another enemy, and this enemy we know right from the earlier sonnets is the time. And here he does not make use of the word time, but he makes the use of the long year set. And year again would be, somewhat synonymous to time used here. So there is shift, there is change, and that change is that the poet does not seem to be in full control of the things as he was earlier in the first quatrain. Like stones, they thinly placed are captioned jewel in the carcanet. Now, what are these thinly placed stones? Perhaps the meetings of the poet with the beloved. They are seldom. They are not frequent. So what we really understand from these next 2 points, that the poet perhaps wishes to meet his beloved, but there are some obstacles, some restrictions which are not easy for the poet to crack, which are not easy for the poet to unlock. So see, he puts them in, those like those precious stones which are thinly placed, which could refer to diamond, and he does refer to that as are captain jewels in the carcanet. So the meetings are like the jewels put in the scarlet, put in the necklace. So that jewel at the top of the necklace would be captaining. So the meetings are also so rare. The meetings are also so seldom between the poet and the beloved. The shift that we have only is in the control. The poet who seemed in control of the things with the blessed key does not seem to be in much of a control of the things in the second quatrain. So is the time that keeps you as my chest, or as the wardrobe which the robe doth hide. Now again, the argument seems to be shifting, but seems to be inclined with the word treasure in the second verse of this sonnet. Now he is again referring to that he has the blessed key, he has the treasure which he does not want to blunt by looking at it every now and then. And then one of the reasons why he does not want to do is the time. Therefore now he is again referring to the preciousness of that treasure which he has put locked, and he does not want to unlock and look at that time. And again he says that it is like a wardrobe which hides a robe. Now robe here would be a reference to some precious clothing. A precious clothing if someone has, he keeps that with great care inside a wardrobe. So wardrobe would hide some precious robe, precious clothes, which one takes out only on some special occasion, special blessed. So the next verse, there is repetition of this word special to make some special instant, special blessed. Now here what we can interpret this sonnet as that he is making his beloved, his friend more precious than anything else. Now that bluntness would again refer that if he and his friend would remain close forever and keep meeting forever, and there is no separation among us between these two, obviously their friendship, their love would lose the charm that perhaps it has. But if they remain at a distance, and if they meet only on occasions, their friendship would get renewed, and there would be more charm associated with that friendship or with those meetings. Just like if there is a cloth with you and you put on that cloth on daily basis, if you are at home and if you go to the office, you wear same robe, same clothes, those clothes would also lose the shine. But if those clothes are kept nicely and with care inside a robe, and then you take them out on some special occasion, on some blessed occasion, fully ironed, those clothes perhaps would give you more pleasure than the clothes which are on a daily use. So he is creating that kind of a metaphor, that kind of an imagery, that kind of a comparison with the meetings of with his friend, with the clothes which are for the daily use, and for the occasional use. So the meetings which seem to be distant, the meetings which seem to be rare, are for a purpose. And even these rare and distant meetings end up preserving the beauty of their friendship by new unfolding his imprisoned pride. The imprisoned pride would again be the pride of their friendship. It's imprisoned because it's very rare. And the unfolding, unfolding would be the continuity of that robe from the earlier verses. The robe is inside a wardrobe that you take it out and you unfold it, you put it on, taking all those things into the consideration. So the unfolding would be the unfolding of the meeting, the unfolding of the treasure. The treasure could be the friend, and the unfolding could be his meeting with his friend, which are rare. But they are rare by choice, because he does not want to make his friendship blunt perhaps, but he wants to make his friendship beauteous. And that could only be if the meetings are rare. If they are usual, if they are casual, they would lose the charm, as most of the casual things do. Blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope, being had to triumph, being lacked to hope. Now, blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope. You could be the reference to his friend whose worthiness gives scope. Scope for what? Scope for everything. Scope for being had to triumph and being lacked to hope. Now that is, this would perhaps sum up this whole sonnet, though it is very difficult to sum up because of the fluctuations in the theme, and also the fluctuations in the control. These things, put this sonnet in a bit of a trouble, or into that category of mystifying it. But the greatness of his friend, the worthiness of his friend is such that it gives scope for everything. Scope for a meeting and scope for a hope. When they meet, being had, when they meet, it's triumph, it's joy, it's a win-win situation. Being lacked, if they do not meet, if they are separated, to hope. Then there is a hope. There's a hope that they'll meet at some point of time. It could be a long year set. There could be rare meetings. There could be seldom occasions when they will meet. But even that lack, even that separation, even that absence gives us hope. So this would be much lifelike sonnet also. Life is also such game where there is uncertainty and there is mystery. There are occasions when one has had everything in his life, so he enters into that point of triumph, point of happiness, of win, of joy, of completion. But there are occasions when life also shows us things are there are failures, there are lags, but life also gives hope. If we failed at this point of time, we have always a hope that there is a second chance, and that second chance will perhaps bring triumph to us, bring joy to us, bring bring win to us. So that was the sonnet number 52 from Shakespearean sonnet. One more thing that being had in this very last verse of the sonnet is, again, some of the critics stretch this being had with sexual connotations and refer to sexual intercourse, which again I said is a stretched interpretation of this sonnet rather than the interpretations which goes in context of the rest of the sonnets. So we would go that being had would refer to the meeting of his friend with his beloved, with his young friend, who with whom the meetings are not very usual, with whom the meetings are not which take place on daily basis, but they are distant, they are rare, they are seldom, they are solemn. So those meetings, when they take place, they give triumph, and when they lack, when there are not so frequent meetings, they still give hope to the poet. That was sonnet number 52. Now, if you look at the themes of this sonnet, the themes would be the theme of absence, because the poet in some terms, in some ways, is mourning his separation from his friend, but it could not be the mourning like he does in sonnet number 48 or others. It is something where he is not very clear what he wants to say, whether he mourns or whether he is happy with the separation. It seems that he is happy with the separation because he does not want to blunt those happiness by looking every hour on that treasure, which could refer by by having frequent meeting with his friend. So it's by choice that he wants to keep this absence. And then there are also suggestions that it could not be by choice, it could be because of the time. So therefore the theme of time also continues in this particular sonnet, where the time is again much like what we have in earlier sonnets, whether it's sonnet 15, sonnet 18, where time appears to be an enemy of the Shakespeare and even the friend of the Shakespeare. But and another theme that we have in this sonnet would be the theme of hope, that life gives, and even the relationship that the poet has with his friend gives to him. If he meets him, if there is a meeting, there is triumph. If it lacks, there is hope. Thank you for watching. I hope that this lecture was helpful for you and you were able to understand sonnet number 52 from Shakespearean sonnets. That is all we have in this session. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share, like, comment and subscribe at your academy. You can even visit homepage of your academy and find a lot of stuff on English literature. You can go to the Your Academy's homepage, visit a playlist section. In playlist section, you can go to the playlist of William Shakespeare or Shakespearean sonnets. We have delivered lectures on quite a number of sonnets if you are interested in. Thank you for watching.